I was born in 1921, and I think that time the Taiwan was under Japanese administration. So I was born as a Japanese. I was born in the very countryside. There is no electricity or nothing, and it's a small village. Even the school, I did not attend the elementary school because the population is so small. There is not enough children to have the school. So it's an it's called the extended classroom from elementary school in nearby. And I was graduated there in 1934. I was very happy because I spent a lot of lively childhood in the countryside, go to the stream, catch fishes, go to the mountain to pick up all the berries and all the wild berries and so on, and with the friends. I was very happy.
I think a lot of it came from my father's early, his childhood history, because prior to losing his parents, he said he lived a simple, happy life, but it was a very tiny little village with no electricity, no water, accessible only by a suspension bridge. It was a mining town, and you traveled to the houses on one of those go-karts. But he was happy. His father was the owner of the mine, of the coal mine, and they lived a very idyllic life. But after he lost both parents to sickness within 3 days of each other, he was the eldest sibling, having to take care of two younger sisters and brothers. And even though he had an uncle who helped him financially, he really felt the burden was on his shoulders to have to make a living and to raise these brothers and sisters. And back then, he knew the only way was to get into education. My dad's sister was the one who persuaded him to continue his education.
Yeah.
And she went on at a very young age. She was only 10 or 11 at that time to become a nurse aide and to help raise money so that he can continue his education. My father was also very grateful because financially there was no money to continue education. There was a sponsor who gave him a scholarship in the town, and this enabled him to continue his studies. He always wanted to be an astrologer. He loved the skies. He loved the solar system, science, but he realized he wasn't going to make a living doing that. So he decided to go to medical school, and he was probably the only one out of his village, the very first one that left the village, continued to university, and also advanced to the top medical school in Taiwan. And after he graduated from medical school, Taiwan was in a lot of political turmoil. It was World War II wrapping up. Like my father explained, there was martial law. There was the massacre of 228. There was just politically very unstable, and there were very few jobs. So my father took the job of the public doctor in this town, and he saw how poor were the people that came to see him. Not only did they come, dressed very poorly, but they barely had money to eat and to live, or much less buy drugs. And because there were so few doctors, he was working day and night trying to help these people. And oftentimes he would pay out of his pocket to buy drugs for them and prescription, and without any salary at all. Back then, the clinics offered him a room and board, and that was all he got. But I think the other true reason that he went into public health was he thought I can see 50, 60 patients a day. But where is this going to get me? With all the diseases that were being treated, malaria, cholera, everything, he felt he could make a bigger impact by going to public health. And that this way, change the health policies, change the health programs in the country, and through this way be able to affect more people. And at that time also, my father had met my mother, and they got married, and my mother said, if we continue like this, neither one of us are going to survive, because there was absolutely no income. And they couldn't live on no salary. And my father is a very compassionate person, and he felt, my mother said he would give these things to all his patients, and there'd be nothing for the two of them. And she's, at that time, then an opportunity came up, and he felt that he would be able to play a more important role that way. Even though he liked treating patients, but, he could dedicate his times towards larger scale health changes and programs. And so that's the main reason he went into public health. One of the main reasons.
I graduated in 45. Has a medical doctor paper on my hand, but nothing, nowhere to go. The government is completely stopped. University hospital has, nobody knows well what his position is, and of course nobody receives salary. And that's when I was in pediatric for 6 months. Now, this pediatric period, every day I see hundreds, 50, 100 of this is babies, the poor ladies with a baby. This is like a flow of the river. The water comes continuously. Now, if somebody doesn't stop there or slow it down, you never clean up the downstream. In other words, if the disease, somebody slows it down. Every day, there's so many patients, we too just cannot handle. And happened to be one of my professors, who is actually Japanese, but the Chinese government retained him as an advisor to continue for about 1 more year. He is like a secretary of health in the United States. But at the same time, he is a professor to teach public health in the university. And he said, one day he said, well, we are all going home. Now all the health work is on your shoulder, on your Taiwanese shoulder. There is not quite sufficient, but enough clinical doctor to take care of the patient. But there is nobody in public health. Now, why don't you, young fellow, think about that and do something of public health? That time, the Chinese brought cholera. So there is an epidemic in the south of Taiwan. And my boss, he said, well, you see, you are employed. Because that time nobody goes to public health. You are employed from today, but prepare to go to South Taiwan tomorrow. I said, for what? I just arrived today, reported for duty He said, don't worry. There is another doctor over there. You just follow his instruction, help him out, because there is a cholera epidemic. So I went the 3 months in the cholera control in the southern Taiwan. After 3 months, cholera seemed to be under control. Another news, my boss said, there is a gentleman from Shanghai, the Rockefeller Foundation, is going to open a malaria research institute in Chaochiu, southern Taiwan. And are you interested? He said, well, he wanted 3 or 4 young doctors. I said, of course, yes, I will go. So I joined the Rockefeller Foundation in 1947 to the southern Taiwan, 47, 48, 49, until mid-50, 3 years and a half. That is really a training period. Rockefeller Foundation, the minute I was there, there's a book, Paul Russell's malariology book. He said, here is the book, and you follow this book, and select a type of work you like to do, and then we will discuss. It's a very, it's not like a classroom, the training. It's a very flexible, he said. So I took this book, well, first study the mosquitoes, study the relation of the rice field and the mosquitoes. Then I choose the drug control. And those, at the same time, the Rockefeller Foundation said, let's say Japanese did a lot, 30, 40 years work in malaria. So you review all the material, review all the Japanese material, and make sure to be sure those are exactly what is the problem today. So 3 years and a half we spent there. And in that period, we did all the control, larviciding, DDT, residual spraying, and sometimes the water control. Then Rockefeller Foundation sent me to Johns Hopkins to take a course in public health. I came to the United States in 1950. So during that period, very fortunately, I met a Hopkins graduate called Dr. Cameron. After 6 months, I graduated, I went home. Then that time, the Rockefeller Foundation, we have all called the stratification of malaria. Is that iron and classified in 4 areas: highly endemic area, meso-endemic area, low endemic area, and non-malarias. So the population that time was 9 million. 9 million in 4 zones. And I made a malaria eradication program presented to his Dr. Camilla. For the first time I know, he is a key person because he's I'm a medical officer with the USAID, but actually no, he has all those authorities. He has no problem, but to do this, if I am not offended, I will ask my friend, a good friend who is a malaria to review this plan. It's okay. I said, okay, of course. So he asked his plan. A good person, Dr. Pretz, is a very nice friend, and I think he also did a wonderful job for Taiwan. Dr. Pretz, we review the 4-year malaria eradication program presented to him. No problem, approved. So from there, then we started the malaria eradication program according to the priority of the area. And besides, another thing is taking into consideration of the local health station, local setup. Every township has a health station. Health station has one medical director, usually about 2 nurses, and 3 or 4 sanitarians. And this group taking care of the health program. And we're using these people. In other words, we make a plan, centralize our plan technique, but operationally it's all decentralized. And it's surprising, the malaria has come down from 1,200,000 cases to 600. And because
in how many years?
there's 2 years, 2 years and a half.
There were over 3,000 people involved, and they were young, they were energetic. This was something that truly, it was a patriotic sense besides a health issue. This was something that they really could do for their country, pretty much like the Peace Corps. And so they mobilized, and the entire community got involved. The people, the local people where they were treating, they wanted to participate in this. And so they collaborated to the full extent that they could. And I think that was one of the key to the success of it. There wasn't any having to persuade people.
No.
There wasn't any resistance. The people welcomed them. This is something that they wanted to do for the country, to eradicate malaria and to see this program succeed. And I think that was truly one of the remarkable things about that program and why it was able to succeed in such a short period of time.
The most difficult part is for the mayor or the township to budget $1 for capita of the population to be covered, because it's very poor. Their revenue is very, very limited, and they have to squeeze $1. And this $1 can be utilized by health officer only, because the mayor cannot touch. And sometimes the mayor said, well, I just ran out of money. I don't have the money. So in that case, I or my colleague, we go there and they say, well, negotiate with the county. And say, well, township so-and-so need help in the malaria fund. Could the county do a little subsidize? The county usually will help the township. So this first year was very difficult to squeeze $1, but second year on, it's very difficult, or no, very easy, because they said, well, if the next township can do it, I can do it. So the mayor, he squeezed money, make $1 available for malaria.
And also because they saw the success
Yeah.
of the program.
Yeah.
So they were willing to.
Yeah, they're willing to.
That was one way of getting the community to participate.
Yeah.
They had to fund it, even though it was $1.
Yeah.
But they took a pride in funding it.
And
every
it was
person.
$1 per person?
Per
person to be spread. For example, one township is about 20,000 people. He has to raise 20,000 new Taiwan dollar for DDT spray alone. And the 20,000, the only person who has authority to use is the health officer. And how he do it is he pay the per diem for the foreman, and he pay the wages for the sprayman.
But he was also able to raise it because they held townships and they held meetings to convince the people of the importance of this program.
Yeah.
And as they saw success in other towns and what it did, for the general health of the public, they were convinced that this was going to work. Growing up, we rarely saw my father because he was often out in the field. My dad is not an office person. He's very much a hands-on person. He likes to be out in the field with his men, with the community, and instead of staying in the office. But I think what always struck me growing up was the excitement that he had. The excitement and the energy that he carried whenever he talked about his work. We rarely saw him because he would often come back, like my father said, pick up your clothes and go out. But then when he talked about his work, it was with such enthusiasm and about the people in the communities, in the towns, and what it was like even working with the families and the village people. And I just remember that the excitement, and not just with my father. We lived in a compound that was 3 houses within a fenced area, and the other 2 families were also malaria people. And so the kids were all the same age. We all grew up together, and we saw all the fathers go on these trips. And when they came back, it was always with so much enthusiasm. I think that was a true sense that we realized what he was doing was really important. He told us a lot of stories about going into the villages, meeting the people, how these people were poor, and yet they would offer him, a little rice, a little something, just as a form of gratitude to thank them. I think that was the other thing. It was just the gratitude of the people was so rewarding for him.
Finally, I got and go to Port of Spain, Trinidad. And Port of Spain, Trinidad, that program, this is the most interesting program. This is a different vector. And always Velator was a different vector mosquito. It does not breed on the ground, breed in a tree, the bromeliad tree. And it came down to the house, around the house, but very wild, this mosquito. They never stay time enough inside the house. So DDT spraying is practically useless. And Besides, well, the Trinidad government, that time I think Dr. Kellett is a malariologist, an Englishman, and he was not very happy about PAHO sending me. Because he said, this young fellow, how can you do this? The problem which I couldn't solve. And he immediately gave me this publication. This is a study made by British pitting group, the entomologist, and my professor in Hopkins, Rosebaum. They too do a little study of these mosquitoes. Both of them said, well, this mosquito will not respond to your eradicate spray. So I said, well, my gosh, I am in this problem. How can I do? Maybe I cannot do. This is a mission impossible. Before I started, I read all this. I said, oh, this is impossible now. First, hire 200-300 young men, climb the tree with a machete, cutting down the bromeliad. And thought, well, this, because eradicate doesn't work, well, we will do this. Now, that doesn't work either because it's so high. This bromeliad sometimes is about 8 feet high up on the tree. So, very dangerous. And besides, the forest is so thick, it's impossible. So finally, they decided to do this with a fire engine. Fire engine to spray copper sulfate. This is fire engine here.
These old photographs.
Spray with a copper sulfate to kill this bromeliad. Oh, it doesn't work either because this small country road cannot take this big fire engine. And besides, the supply, this is a high pressure. It constantly needs a supply of the copper sulfate, and you need 2-3 trucks to carry the copper sulfate. It doesn't work. So finally, that time I think I was working with there is an entomologist sent by PAHO, Dr. J.C. Hoff, who is actually Aedes aegypti, the technician. And I asked his boss, well, can I work with him? He can work with me, and well, let's find out what's really the problem, because at this age where I cannot do anything, cannot spray, do all this impossible, I have to go back home. Then every week we spend 2-3 hours near the house and try to locate where these mosquitoes come and bite and stay. And finally we found it really spray very short inside the house, but it stay outside sometimes. Sometimes spray the underneath of because over there, because the hot climate, they built
The house are on stilts.
still, and sometimes you find there. Sometimes you find the nearby vegetation. And so, well, let's try spray this area with DDT instead of inside the house. Inside also still spray, but outside too, they spray the entire area of the house, which then PAHO Washington, or somebody doesn't quite agree. Well, that's against all the guide of the DDT spraying, and well, besides, it's not take a lot of more DDT, more time. Well, and we don't know well if that will work. But finally, I think at that time was Tito da Silva again. I think Tito da Silva. He said, "Oh, that's okay. Let him do experiment." So we said experimentally we will spray this area. And after 1 year and a half, malaria fortunately disappeared. And solved that problem. I was so happy. Well, because that was really a problem for me.
That was a big challenge.
Huh?
Well, I think like he said, you know, he feels his biggest accomplishment was the program in Taiwan, and I think that was his probably the biggest legacy that he did that, and just the stress on going into public health and how it benefits the population at large and the world. I think, you know, there were decades afterwards, or when he retired from PAHO, and he looked back on a lot of his medical colleagues in Taiwan and places who had now become millionaires and rich and all this, and he thought, well, I was a salary man my whole life. You know, I went into this not for money, but out of love for this kind of work to help the people. And he weighed, which was greater. You know, when you get older and you're in your retirement, money becomes important. But I think in the end, he truly realized that the personal satisfaction of having been able to have an impact and help the world truly was his contribution, and that gave him, you know, a really good sense.